So Taoism is the idea that you go with the flow. And what's the flow? Well, whatever is natural. And the idea is that when you try to go against what's natural, that's when you start experiencing suffering. So how do you get rid of suffering? How do you get rid of bad decisions in life? Stop trying to go against the flow. Go with the flow. And how it is that they break that down is, of course, part of the process. There's a bunch of things going on here, and it tells us also why it's so important to read closely. So, for example, there's this word content. Okay, what does it mean to be content? Satisfied, yeah. So to be content is just to be satisfied. I don't remember if it was in this class. I was talking about a guy I know. Just found out what his real name is. I've known him for about a year now. We call him Savage. He actually graduated from here, like 2015 or something. I think something like that, 2014. But I heard when I first started talking to him. Bless you. I heard that he never actually eats until he's full. He only ever eats until he's satisfied. And so I asked him, like, is that true? He says, oh yeah. When's the last time you ate until you were full? And he says he's been doing this since he was in high school. He's always made a point to not eat until he's full, but just to eat until he's satisfied. So like, he might buy like a foot-long sandwich, but he'll only eat half of it, 6 inches, or he'll eat half of that, depending on how hungry he is. And I've asked him, like, do you do that kind of everything in life? And he's like, yeah. That's how Savage talks. Yeah, bro. Yeah. Yeah. And he's very much into Eastern philosophy. He's in school right now studying Eastern philosophy. He's big on, he's a fan of Lao-Tzu and Taoism and all that. And so this is an important point to us. So when you're satisfied, when you're content, so notice how he's not talking about how to be happy or how to be miserable. He's just talking about how to be content, because that's very different from being like exceptionally happy and experiencing the low lows of life. I mean, this is a big part of Buddhism, is that you try to eliminate your desires in life, because what makes you really miserable in life is when you aren't living in those high highs. It's when you want stuff. And so, for example, if you never wanted a new car, it would never bother you that you never got one. So if you always want one, you're always looking, going like, man, I want a new car. What's causing your misery in life? What's causing your suffering? Well, the desire for a new car. So how do you get rid of that suffering? Well, eliminate the desire. How do you do that? Well, that's the process of Buddhism. How do you get past that? And so to find yourself at a point in life where you're content, where you're satisfied. So what is it to be content and satisfied? Well, to be simply yourself. And that's very difficult, by the way. Simply yourself. Because what this thing is very difficult for us to narrow down. So if I were to ask you, well, who are you? What are you? That's a tough question for most people to answer. Because first and foremost, we have to stop and think about it. And it's an interesting thing that, and I don't even mean this as a joke. Most people probably think more about what they want to eat for lunch than they think about something like this. Now, why is that? I think there's something that we take for granted, that we just know what this is. But then you'll notice that if I were to ask you, well, explain to me, tell me who you are. How difficult that would be for most people to do. It's hard to do. And so sometimes, again, we're so familiar with something in life that we've never had to think about it, or we've never had to explain it before. So once we're in a position of having to do that, well, now of course it's problematic. And now start thinking about the kinds of things that you would say about yourself. And you have to ask yourself, are these things that are true about me? Or are these things that I wish were true about me? Like, if you were to say, for example, I'm a nice person, for example. Then I'd ask you, are you a nice person? A lot of people will follow up with things like, well, I'm nice to people who are nice to me. Well, then are you really a nice person? Or are you just somebody who's kind of engaged in this like credit card transaction of social kindness? I'll give to you if you give to me. Or are you just a kind person, regardless of how other people are? Because if you're not kind when others aren't, well, then you're just kind of a reaction. You're kind of a reactionary. And you react to the world around you, which means that there's no real you. There's only this thing that reacts to the chemical processes around them. So you're kind of all over the place. You're not stable. And if you're not stable, surprise, surprise, you can't know yourself. And if you can't know yourself, surprise, surprise, you don't know how you fit into this whole world and universe around you. If you don't know who you are, you can't know how you fit into anything. And that doesn't mean that you have to fit in a way that kind of conforms or is forced into it, but just you see your place in it. And so being able to figure out who you are is a hard thing to do, a really hard thing to do. And then these next parts here, don't compare or compete. You know, in those senses, well, what does he mean? Don't compare yourself to others. Don't compete with others. Now, you'll find yourself in positions where you're going to compete with others, like if you're going to run a race, for example. You know, you're going to compete with others, but if you realize what it really is, you're not competing against another person. You're competing against yourself. And I don't mean that in some hippy-dippy way. I mean, you really have to confront, I really do. Because every day, you're having to do this. Every day, are you better today than you were yesterday? You know, in fact, too oftentimes we focus on other people. You know, I'm faster than this person over here. But are you as fast as you could be? Because if you were as fast as you possibly could be, yeah, you'll be faster than that person. But that just won't even matter anymore. They're not even in the equation anymore. And then part of the problem is that if you think you just have to be faster than this person, you know, you're only going to be a little bit faster than them. But imagine how fast you could be. And imagine what you really could be in life if you maximize your possibilities, if you maximize your potentials. And then this right here, you're going to find a lot of times is the source of unhappiness for a lot of older people, especially old people. They think back about what they could have been. You'll hear people talk about this kind of stuff all the time. Now, some of you maybe hear your parents talk about this stuff. Here's what I could have been, and that's why I want the best for you, because I didn't get as far as I could have. You know? And then that's this dangerous cycle. I shouldn't say dangerous, but it's certainly a psychologically tyrannical cycle that we engage in where parents, you know, we don't become what we could have been, so therefore we try to get our kids to become more. And then they rebel in the same ways that we do, so they don't become what they could have been. We're capable of just, I mean, literally unfathomable. We can't even imagine what we could be. We can't even conceive of what our possible upper limits could be because we don't do this, you know? We're too busy thinking, oh, good enough. I'm better than that person over there. And then we suffer significant, you know, psychological trauma, you could say, at least cognitive dissonance, when all of a sudden one day we come across somebody who is much better than we are. And then we just have to kind of conceive of what we could have been now. Imagine if you fulfilled your potential, you'd be better than that person over there. You know? So you'll come across some people in life, like they'll say that your number one indicator of your possibilities of success in life are your IQ. You can't do anything about that at this point. The die is cast. But your number two predictor of success in life is conscientiousness, your ability to pay attention to and follow details. That you can do something about. So maybe you're starting off a little bit behind in one area, but if you can maximize those other areas, but you're going to be better in those things. But that all has to do with ignoring what other people are doing, because if somebody else is doing better than you, think about what the possibilities of that are. You know, why do we hate the kid in class who answers all the questions? Because it reminds us that we don't know the answers. Why is it that we hate the people who are successful? You notice how when someone's successful, a lot of times we just say, ah, they cheated. Some of you gamers know that. You know? Or if you come across like somebody who's successful in business, or somebody who's wealthy, we have this tendency to think, oh, they must have cheated, they must have bribed people, there must be corruption, there must be this, there must be that. Why? Because making up those things is harder than facing the truth, which is that we could have been more successful than that person. Because we had something inside of us that would have allowed us to become better. But we didn't. Instead, we did this. And so what ends up happening is we become resentful, we become envious, we become angry, we start lashing out at the successful people around us. Because we figure the only way they could have become successful is by corruption or something like that. And then we start building cultures around that, which we see all around the world. Corruption cultures that are just kind of built on corruption or assume that corruption is just part of human nature. And it's these things that it's the philosophy of envy, really. Or you could see somebody else who's successful, and maybe that could motivate you. Not to beat them, but to become better. You know? And maybe in becoming better, you could beat them. Who knows? But all these things, man, you know, can leave it at that, but you get the idea what we could become. Now this last part here, I think that, again, I think Alfredo is absolutely right. The idea that everyone will respect you. What's interesting is that this is a translation of chapter 8 by this guy, Stephen Miller, I think his name is. And there's a lot of controversy about his translation of that phrase right there. Everyone will respect you, because it seems kind of outside the character of other things that Lao-Tzu says. So if that stands out to you as something that's strange or inconsistent in the comment, that's because it is. You know? Because remember, if you're not trying to compare, if you're not trying to compete, then why would you care if everyone respects you? People respecting you is a byproduct of what you do. It comes from what you're doing. You don't have control over it. So if you're trying so hard to get people to respect you, it's not going to work, because you have no control over whether or not people respect you. You have control over your character. You have control over the things that you say and do. You don't have control over how people interpret that, or how they feel about it. And again, understand that if you're highly successful, people are going to hate you. People are going to disrespect you. People are going to feel those things about you, because you're reminding them that that's not who they are. It's not what they are. You know? So nothing is everything. You'll never get everyone to do anything. Heck, you can't even get everyone to live. You know? If you can't do that, what makes you think you can get everybody to do anything? You know? It's not possible. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?
So he's like so he's the one that found Laozi? So like,
yeah.
It's like
And he started out philosophy. It's a philosophy and a religion. It's kind of like all in one thing.
What is it called, Rico?
What's that?
What is it called?
See my point?
Lao-Tzu.
Somebody asks an intelligent question and somebody else has to drag it down. Could put those away.